Old Testament Part 1. Welcome to our series on how the Bible was built. Today we are looking at how the Old Testament became scripture. As always, be sure to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share. The first part of our house of the Bible is most often referred to as the Old Testament. The family of faith, called the Jews, came to the land we know as current-day Palestine, biblical days Canaan or the Promised Land, about 1800 years before the birth of Jesus. The cornerstone of the house of the Bible wasn't laid in place, though, until the 7th century BC, well into Jewish history. Here's the amazing story of what happened. The Jewish people had become divided into two nations. The northern nation or kingdom was called Israel. The southern nation or kingdom was called Judah. Let's briefly look at the splitting of two kingdoms. Solomon reigned over Israel for 40 years. You can read more about it in 1 Kings chapter 11. Then Rehoboam, who was a son of and the successor to Solomon and a grandson of David, became king. At this time, the northern tribes had grown weary of Solomon's oppressive forced labor. 1 Kings chapter 5. The Israelites/Jews asked Rehoboam to lighten their burden, but rather than following the wise counsel of the elders who served under Solomon, Rehoboam listened to his young peers and pledged to intensify the burden of labor. 1 Kings chapter 12. This prompted the 10 northern tribes to split. From 931 to 722 BC, there were two kingdoms. In 722, Assyria conquered the northern kingdom, known as Israel. From 722 to 586 BC, there was only the southern kingdom. Judah had been ruled for more than 50 years by a king named Manasseh. From the point of view of Jewish religion, Manasseh was an unacceptable king. He promoted the worship of many gods, and during his reign, every community had its own god to worship, found in 2 Kings chapter 22. The worship of Yahweh God pretty much faded away. When Manasseh died, a young king named Josiah became king. King Josiah had the temple rebuilt/repaired, and in this process, a priest of the temple discovered the book that we now call Deuteronomy, hidden away in some dark corner. It was written in the time of King Manasseh. The person who wrote this book, or letter, had to do it in hiding, hoping that someone would find it in brighter times. King Josiah welcomed the newly discovered book and made it the program for his reformation. It became the law of the land. The nation of Judah was a theocracy, that is to say, a country in which the civil law and the religious law were one and the same. By making this religious writing the law of the land, Josiah gave it special status in the eyes of the people. And when you give a religious writing special status, you have taken the first step to the creation of Holy Scripture. So what is so special about the book of Deuteronomy? No writing will long continue to be held in high esteem by the people, even if the king dictates it, unless they find it worthy and helpful in its own right. Deuteronomy appealed to the people because it contained the two great elements of Yahweh, God, the priestly element and the prophetic element. The priestly element. When people have strong religious convictions, they put beliefs and attitudes into rituals and ceremonies. By participating in these ceremonies, they dramatize and affirm their beliefs. These rituals help keep a religion alive. For example, if believers don't go to church, it's easy for our faith to fall away. The religion of the Jews had its ceremonies and rituals, and these, too, are described in the book of Deuteronomy. This is the priestly element. The prophetic element. The religion of the Jews had a concern for how people should behave themselves. It had well-defined ideas about how individuals should treat one another, what is just and right, what God demands of us day in and day out. This is the moral or ethical aspect of religious faith. How God expected people to behave is the prophetic element of Israel's religion described in the book of Deuteronomy. We can say that the book of Deuteronomy taught the followers of Yahweh to be reverent and how to be good. That is why the people found it so useful. That's why it became the cornerstone of the Old Testament. Deuteronomy is not the oldest piece of writing in the Old Testament, but it was the first to be looked on as holy scripture. What is the Torah? It takes more than a cornerstone to form a foundation. In the 200 years following the discoveries of the book of Deuteronomy, several other books were discovered which were recognized by the people as of great importance to their faith and life. We know these books as Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. Add the book of Deuteronomy and you have the Old Testament law, or the Pentateuch. And the Torah, or the Pentateuch, became holy scripture for the Jews. Returning to our metaphor, Deuteronomy is the cornerstone, and the law is the foundation for our Old Testament wing of the house of the Bible. In our next video, we will look at the second part of the Old Testament, the walls and the roof. If you liked this video, be sure to like it, subscribe to our channel, and share it.